Hey guys, welcome to the lab. We're back with some more exclusive content. Episode 11 of Leon in the Lab goes right now. Really special episode. We had Greg from the Sneak This podcast join us, and it was a really fun one. So we spoke for a couple hours. We're only going to launch half of the interview today because it was, quite frankly, it was too long. Greg's a great storyteller. We ended up building 4 amazing hats. So this episode is going to cover the first half of the interview, and then at the end of this episode, at around 10:30 Eastern Time, these hats will be available for pre-order at Pro Image Sports Colorado. And so hopefully you guys enjoy this episode. We talked about a lot of things. Greg came really prepared. He was a wonderful guest. He's been a long time supporter of the show. If you watch back to one of his earlier episodes on his podcast, it featured Pierre. It was so long ago, he used to be called Captain America back then. Jay Tips has been on his show, Justin from Hat Club. So there is an intersection when it comes to sneakerheads and people who collect fitteds. So it's kind of been cool to watch him kind of grow his podcast and do his thing. They've been doing it for a very long time, 7 years, I think, what Greg mentioned. But it was cool to get him on the show and finally get to create something with him. His show's been something that I've been watching for a long time. So hope you guys enjoy this episode. And remember, both the hats here that we create are going to be up for pre-order from Pro Image Sports Colorado at the end of the show. And I'd like to thank them again for being the sponsor of this week's episode. So hope you guys enjoy. Hey guys, welcome to the lab. Today we have Greg joining us from the Sneak This podcast. How you doing today, Greg?
What up, Leon? How you doing?
Good. So for those who don't know, Greg, you host a very influential podcast in my world, at least, and I would say in the rest of the world, the Sneak This Sneaker Podcast. How long have you been doing that for?
So we've been doing the podcast for 7 years now. So I just got back from Vegas and I recorded an episode with a special guest we had that lives out there. That was episode 340. So we started that podcast. Like I said, it was 3 of us at the time. You know, the whole premise of the show was, I'll put it this way. I had just started getting into podcasts. So I was like, you know what? It'd be dope if there was a sneaker podcast. Now, I didn't know that there were other ones out there before.
Mhm.
And there was one that was like the only one currently running, and they were in Detroit, and that was Sneaker Box Podcast. And they're out in Detroit, and that was the only one running at the time. And I listened to a few episodes, kind of got familiar with it. And it was way different than what I envisioned a sneaker podcast to be. You know, it felt a little bit more formal, a little bit more, I don't want to say businessy, but it was just way more like, sort of stricter, I guess. I felt that like they gave their opinions freely on some things and not all things. And I could be wrong. I only listened to a few episodes, but me, George, and at the time Ryan, who was on the show, we had our text message thread that was, one of those threads where if it got out, it could be a problem, So, but we used to talk about sneakers, talk about people involved in sneakers, sneaker content, YouTubers. We used to talk about everything, and we were like, man, what if we just be ourselves and record it and turn it into a podcast? And I had ran the idea by George and Ryan I drew our logo by hand. I used to be an architect major, so I could draw a little bit. So I drew the logo by hand, just the idea, because I knew if I explained it to them, they wouldn't get it. So I felt like I needed something to sort of get them a little excited about it. So I drew the logo, explained it, and I sent the logo to them, and we gave it a shot, recorded, found a studio, and just went with it. And I've been doing it ever since. So
For sure. I got to really thank my friend TJ. He was the one that really put me on to you guys. I've always collected sneakers. I've always kind of been into sneakers, but I'm gonna admit, like, I don't know them as much as you guys do. You guys
right.
Make it super entertaining. I had to pause it a lot of times because you guys will be talking about something. I have to wait. I got to look up what the hell the guys are talking about. So,
Right.
but your podcast has been a heavy influence for the views from the vault, because when we first started, we kind of use you guys as a model of consistency. So you guys have top tens all the time. You guys have the year end sneaker draft. You guys have, you guys have your bits, and you know, for the most part, every week in, week out, you guys are there. So
Right.
we really looked at you guys, and we really looked up to you guys as really influential in your space, and we wanted to kind of model our show to be that, but for hats.
Right. I'm back now.
Yeah, you're back. You're back.
Lord have mercy. Oh man, I tell you. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. Okay, so yeah, you guys were a show we kind of looked up to in terms of like consistency and just being there every week. I'd look forward to it. You guys do sometimes upload the audio first, but then I have to resist temptation and I try to watch you guys on YouTube because for me, I'm more of a visual participant. But
Yeah,
yeah,
you know what's crazy is like that's, and I talk about it. 7 years is a long time to talk about sneakers, but we had did about 50 something episodes, and I think our first video was episode 53.
okay.
So that was so hard to learn how to edit video and like the right angles. And at the time, we only had one camera, and now we have four.
Hmm.
And buying programs, learned it all by hand. I do all of it myself, the graphics on the screen, because everyone wanted to see our faces because we're so animated and how we talk. And then, just like you said, we have a lot of listeners who are like sort of sneakerheads. They're part-time sneakerheads. They love sneakers, but they're not into it as deep as we are. And there's some that like just don't know what we're talking about from the 80s and the 90s and stuff like that. So we like to put the pictures on the screen, the graphics, and people can see like, oh, I remember those, or dang, let me go look for those in cops. So that was definitely something to get adjusted to. We've got the hang of it now, and it's like it's just like now technology. It's one of those things where it's like got to make sure you're on point with it. And I try to get the video out as fast as possible. When we first started doing video, we would literally record and like be done at like 9 o'clock at night. I would stay up the entire night editing and just go straight to work. I would never go to bed because I wanted the video out that fast. But as I've gotten older, I can't do that anymore. I can't stay awake that longer. So, but it's been trials and tribulations, but we love it. So
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Do you remember how long ago since it was when Pierre did your show? It's got to be almost
Whew.
2.5, 3 years.
Yeah, it was a really long time ago.
Yeah,
It's at least a good probably 3 years, maybe.
yeah,
Um, and that was different because it was like, man, was it during COVID year?
yeah.
We were in studio, and I can't remember if it was before COVID or if it was right after COVID when we first went back to the studio.
It
I
had to
don't.
be. It had to be after, I think,
Okay,
because
after
we
COVID.
we had already done our show for a while. Because our show started pretty much during COVID.
Okay,
Because Pierre, we're all stuck at home, nothing to do,
right.
and Pierre's such a busybody that he needed something to kind of occupy his mind. And yeah, we kind of started our show, and then it wasn't until we were already going that he linked up with you guys and was a feature. So yeah, that was a really
Yeah,
cool crossover episode for us, for him to be there, and he definitely showed out for the show and got us a different genre of fans, and that was
right.
a really interesting thing. For me, I gotta tell you though, like when the pandemic was going on, like part of the interesting part for me was to see, like, you guys are a sneaker podcast, but all you see is what you guys are wearing for the hats. So I was always interested to see, like, which LA hat or which Boston hat you'd be wearing, or
Right.
because you guys were kind of fashionable in that sense. So that was always like what I wanted to see.
Yeah, you know what's funny, and I would probably talk about it a little bit more later, but you know, I don't think we had realized how like the hats became like the third and fourth host of the show.
Mhm.
Um, we were buying hats and wearing hats on a consistent basis, but we really didn't know the genre. Like, there was hat culture like there is sneaker culture. We had really no idea about it. I
Mhm.
honestly think that we felt like we had stumbled across like some fire hats. And then like once we realized, oh, there are people that have been doing this, like
Yeah.
there are people who are really involved in this, then it just became like an even bigger thing. Plus, you know, you know, when you buy sneakers, it's so expensive.
Yeah.
It's such a bad addiction and habit. So hats sort of made us feel like, oh, well, if I buy 5 hats, that's equivalent to buying 1 pair of Jordans. So it's okay. It's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
The problem was we were still buying the Jordans and the hats, and we were buying both, and it was like, all right, we're getting out of hand. But that COVID year was insane. Like hats
Yeah.
were coming to the house every single day.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
we weren't leaving the house as often, so wearing actual shoes didn't matter. But like I wear hats in the house. Like I don't not wear a hat, you know.
Hmm.
Yesterday I went to soccer practice for my son. I coached the team, and that was my first time not wearing a hat, and everybody just kept saying something's different. They couldn't tell what it was, and it's because I wasn't wearing a hat, you know. But yeah, man, but we learned a lot from you guys. We learned a lot from everybody. Like it was just like, holy crap, there's like social media pages dedicated to hats, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And it was like that was dope, man. So it's sort of that natural connection. It was like, you know, you go from your for us, we go feet up. For you guys, you probably go hat down, you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. For
it was a
sure.
good connection right there.
Yeah. It was definitely a crazy time. The world slowed down, and then production felt like it slowed down for everything. So like just getting stuff was harder. So it just made it more rare. And then, like for all the stores to, I think a big thing with the pandemic was a lot of these mom and pop shops that we normally wouldn't have a chance to cop from started getting online because they had to do it to
Right.
survive. And yeah, and then you started seeing content like people hosting lives, or people doing hat battles, or top 10 lists, or whatever it was. It just evolved, and it was like this thing that just kept growing. So it's cool to see the intersection between the two groups, sneakerheads and people who like fitted hats. But yeah, it's always this like kind of growing, and things are just crossing over all the time.
Oh yeah. You know, and it's I'm like, yeah, fitted hats is crazy because it's like, yeah, I could talk, right? Like I don't want to,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, okay. All right, I don't want to veer off because I can do that. Like I can
yeah,
just talk.
it's fine.
But you know what's crazy is that like, and I didn't, I wear a lot of Boston hats, right?
Hmm.
And LA is my team, Dodgers my team, California is where I'm from, and I wore a lot of Boston hats, and I loved the side patch, the big what,
99.
the 99 one, right?
Mhm.
But you know what I had realized, and I thought about this weekend on why I love wearing Boston hats so much, and it's not because of the side patch. So I moved to Arizona in 1999, right?
Mhm.
And I came from the Bay Area, and I was heavy into basketball. That's all I did for high school and in school and stuff like that. So that was always my main focus. So when me and my family moved to Arizona in 99, I always wore fresh clothes. I always dressed dope and stuff like that. But I never wore hats in in high school in California. And I don't think I even realized it. I just never wore hats.
Mhm.
And I think I had a few, but I never owned a fitted hat, right? So we had to live with my grandma for a while until we could buy a house because my parents were trying to decide what city to live in based on where my dad worked. He ran a few pharmacies for a grocery store chain out here. And so I remember when we first drove to my grandma's house, we first moved in, and my uncle's 1 year older than me. And I spent the weekend with him this weekend. That's what made me think of this story was he had a Boston fitted hat. And I had never had a fitted hat. I had never wore one. I had never tried a fitted hat on in my life. So when I seen that hat that didn't have a snap in the back, I was amazed. And I was 16,
Yeah.
right? Other people probably had them. It probably sounds ridiculous being 16 in your first fitted hat, but that was my first time. And there was a nightclub out here, and it was a country nightclub. It was called Rock and Rodeo, but on like Friday nights was like hip hop night. So I remember like, having my clothes on and stuff, and I just put his fitted on and I never took it off. And it got to the point to where I wore it so much he just let me have it. So a Boston Red Sox Navy hat is my very first fitted hat of all time, and he gave it to me.
There you go.
And I think that's where I sort of have a connection with the Boston hats.
That's funny. That's funny. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. But outside of hats, like what are some of your favorite sneakers that you kind of really cherish?
Um, you know, I'll tell you this. Like my favorite Jordan of all time is a Jordan 6 infrared.
Okay.
Um, And it's the first one that Jordan won the championship. But like, what's crazy about that sneakers is it started me with sneakers, and that was because of my dad. So I remember when we were younger, we were living in California, and we were in LA, we were in Inglewood, and the Lakers were playing the Bulls in the finals. This is 91, whatever it was. And the only way that I could stay up past my bedtime was if I had to act like I was interested in sports. So if I was like, oh man, the basketball game's on, my dad'd be like, oh yeah, come over here. Because if I just wanted to play, it was go to bed.
Yeah.
So I remember he was watching the Lakers, and now we're in LA. So we're watching the Lakers. This is my first time ever watching Jordan play. So we're watching the Bulls and Lakers, and we're like, and I'm like, my dad had been watching, he knew everybody. And I'm like, who is that? I mean, he was killing the Lakers. Magic was old, James, all of them were old. You know, they were old men at the time. They weren't going to beat these young Bulls. And he was wearing the infrared sixes. And I remember when the Bulls won that championship, my dad was like, oh, I'm buying you Jordans. I didn't. Okay, cool, Dad. And I remember my mom and my dad getting in this ridiculous argument because of how much they were back then. And I think back then, from my size, I think they were like 39. Like, it wasn't stupid high, you know, but back then, that's a lot, you know, especially for a kid who's going to go to school in term, maybe 49, 59, I don't remember. And that was my very first pair of Jordans, and he got me those. And you know what started the addiction was, it was realizing in that time and era that not everybody had Jordans. Not everybody. It's not like today, you know, even with fitted hats, and I'll kind of talk about that a little bit later, but like, there was a time where you wear your Jordans and you could be the only one in the entire school with a pair of Jordans. You could be the only one in your entire complex with a pair of Jordans. You could be the only one in an entire block. You could walk in the mall and maybe 3 people in the entire mall had Jordans. That's how expensive they were, and that's how like sort of nuancy they were, you know?
Yeah.
I remember going to school wearing those Jordans, and I remember the older kids losing their minds. They were like, oh, look at little man got the Jordans, oh my God. Like, they lost it. I was hooked immediately. That attention, it made you, it separated you from everybody else, and it made you feel a lot more special, you know? So that's always been that's my favorite Jordan of all time. You know what I mean? That's probably my most, if you want to say cherish is the word, cherish is probably my, you know, cherished sneaker of all time. And it's when they retroed it, I bought 6 of them. I did. I was like, I'm going to get, it was stupid at the time, but you know, now I'm like, dear God, like I had so many of them. I golfed in a pair. I played basketball in a pair. I wore a pair. Like, I was just trying to do anything in them just to wear them, you know? So, but yeah, that's my favorite sneaker all time.
It's funny, like the technology does not hold up. I know they're designed for basketball, but they are not good basketball shoes.
No, well, you know what's funny is that I tell this people all the time, like, you know, we used to hoop in this stuff, right?
Yeah, heavy as hell.
And I honestly feel like it made us stronger, faster, better, because they were so heavy. But it wasn't that we realized they were heavy back then, because those were our shoes. Like, there was no other option. A light version of a shoe was like wearing, you know, maybe a shell toe or something, a canvas, something that was like for whatever, like you wore with some khakis, you know. That was a version of a light shoe. Even a shell toe wasn't that light. But man, we used to hoop in them, used to do everything. We used to run from dogs, cops, everything in them.
Yeah.
So them joints used to hold us down, you know. But I remember having those in LA, and this was during an era that like somebody would take your shoes from you. And we used to take our old beat up sneakers in our backpack. We wear our Jordans to school. And if we had to go outside or walk anywhere for whatever reason, we would put the old sneakers in the backpack and put the new sneakers in the backpack, put the old ones on. And we would just hope that they didn't steal our backpack that day. You know what I mean? Like, this was Bloods, Crips era. Like, Bloods and Crips used to come on to, I used to go to a Christian school because my mom them knew, like, oh yeah, we're not going to public school because this was LA. And the Bloods, actually it was mostly Crips. Crips would jump over our fence at the school and talk to us. I'm talking first, second, third grade. Like, they would try to recruit us. They would tell us, like, man, we play video games all day. We kick it all day. It sounded like the greatest thing ever. and we would ignore them. But I had friends who legit never came back, and that's no joke. I'm talking third grade, second grade. Like, I just never saw them again. They went with that crowd. And the only way the Crips, and this is when people had respect. It was a Christian school. We had a pastor. The pastor would have to come outside, and once they saw the pastor in his robe and the little thing across his neck, oh, they took off running. You know, that was respectful days. Today, I don't know if that would happen, but it was during that era where it was like, you know, it was trying to find out what lane you fit in. So having Jordans and stuff like that, I feel like, you know, which I probably didn't realize at the time, it put me in my lane of sneakers, fashion, cool kid, basketball. That's it. Try not to mess with him that much. He has his own path, you know. So
yeah, it's funny is I almost have like an opposite story. So when I was younger, my dad would take me, you know, back to school shopping or sneaker shopping or whatever, but he didn't give a shit what I bought as long as it was under $100. So I'm in Canada, $100 can't get you nothing. So I got kamikazes, like Shacknesses, and all the different Reeboks with the crazy air bubbles. I never got like the good stuff. So
oh no. See, that was the good stuff. See, there was a block in time where I bought, man, when I tell you, man, when I was young, my sneaker collection, I'm talking all the way from that second grade through seventh grade. I mean, it was stupid large, and we moved around a lot.
Mhm.
And the kamikazes, Shacknosis, Shack Attacks, Emmitt Smiths, E22s, Herman Moore, I had all those Reebok questions. And, you know, the thing was for me was, you know, I was never the biggest kid, but I was always super cool. I held my own in every single sport, so nobody could say anything about my height or my size, because it was like, it didn't matter how tall or short I could get a girlfriend. I had dope clothes. I was good, you know.
Mhm.
But the one thing that like always aligned up perfectly for me with sneakers was that was all I wanted. My mom knew that's all I wanted, so that was it. So my birthday's in January, so it always lined up perfectly. I would get a new pair for back to school, which was around that August, September. Then I would get another pair for Christmas, sometimes 2 or 3 pair for Christmas, because it was like, yo, do you want multiple gifts or do you want, oh, just give me 2 pair of sneakers. Then my birthday came in January, so I would get the next colorway. So I would always get around 3 to 4 sneakers a year because I could like line it up good, and I play basketball. So
Yeah.
my excuse was, yo, I can't wear my school sneakers on the basketball court, mom. So they would buy me another basketball pair of sneakers. So I was averaging about 4 to 6 pair of sneakers a year. And back then, like they thought I was rich. You know, they
Yeah.
thought we were rich. Now, my parents, when I got older, I realized how much more responsible they were with their finances than, you know, a lot of my other friends' parents. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And what's crazy is that back then sneakers came out in like 3 colorways. You had your white, you had your black, and maybe like a all-star color, Carolina, whatever Jordan came out. You may have 3. I could get all 3 because I lined it up just right. And sneakers didn't sell out like that.
Yeah.
Like, because only certain people were willing to pay $100, 110, 99. It wasn't everybody.
Yeah.
So Reeboks was sort of like that alternative. Like you could go that 79, 89 route. It was like, okay, 79, cool. But like 100, 110, that was like, whoa. You know what I mean? So, you know, I always was very fortunate in that manner to where like seventh grade, it was like, dang, Greg got the blue ones too. Greg got the white ones too, and the black ones. But I was just lining them up just perfectly.
That's probably the one and only time I've ever told that someone's ever told me that them having their birthday in January was an advantage, because everyone who always says get the double gift, maybe this is for birthday and
Oh no,
Christmas, you know, whatever.
it
But you
was
made it
perfect
work.
for me, you know.
All right,
But
that's awesome.
yeah, but like that time in LA, like people always ask me like how I got into sneakers, and that Jordan story was the first how I got my first pair of like, and I had sneakers, but like Cortez's, Chuck Taylor and stuff, but like that was my first like whoa, where like I was felt a little bit special, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Um, but then also that was the era where, like I told you, people were getting robbed, shot, and things like that. And this is it's kind of messed up, but a real big push into me wanting more sneakers were people getting shot by him. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Hmm.
Um, it was a crazy time where, like, I remember I wasn't a friend of mine. He was way older than me, but I knew who he was. He was like one of the older kids that, like, had graduated, but would like come pick up his little brother and play basketball with us. So we just thought he was the coolest person ever. And he had been shot before, right? He had got shot in some crazy stuff, but like this time we heard he got shot again, right? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So he had got shot again, and we were like, "Oh shoot, did he die?" And they were like, "Nah, they tried to take his Jordans." And we were like, "Take his Jordans." The main thing I thought was, what color did he have? And he had on black fives, and I was like, I need them. That was the only thing that I could think of. It's messed up, but back then, like if somebody was willing to kill for something, them joints must be hot. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, them joints must be hot. We got to get our hands on them. So, and that was just the time, you know, and I'm very straight up and honest with my stuff. You know what I mean? Like that's literally what it was. And I'm pretty confident he's dead now. He was a bad person, but you know, what do you do? You know,
he'd be rocking the Dead Toe Force.
Yeah.
But yeah, all right, cool. So you've come to the lab. You've sent me a couple ideas on what we're building today. So let's get going. So without further ado, which hat do you want to start on first?
Let's start with so I just like this is sort of like my like being from California, right? My wife always sort of you know, I don't want to say she makes fun of me, but like she just doesn't understand it. Like when you live in California, it's a feeling, you know. I'm sure people have that about New York and they have that about wherever they're from, but California for me is just something special, you know. I was originally born in Oxnard, but we moved to Inglewood when I was a baby. But the palm trees in California is what just always made me feel like I'm home. Like this is where I'm at. This is my personality. This is me. And we would go visit a cousin of mine in Compton. It was actually my dad's cousin. We would always visit her in Compton. And I remember there was a street, and these are all over California, but I think they're king palm trees. I'm not sure, but the tallest palm trees ever. I mean, it's just from the ground up, just to the sky. And I was always fascinated by those palm trees because those palm trees are different. I live in Arizona now, and Arizona palm tree is different than the ones you see in California. All right, they just are. And these palm trees just made me feel special. And when you drive to California, when you fly into California and you see those palm trees, it just made me feel really good. So I always said if I could design a hat for myself, it'd be based off the palm tree. You know what I mean? And you know what? And I do want to say something. Well, you know what? I know you know, Joe had sent the questions, like sort of like what we kind of may go over or whatnot. I didn't know if we were gonna do any more later, but you know, I really appreciate you um, giving me this opportunity to do this because, like you talked about with the hats on the podcast, Hat Club is very big out here. You know, that's our thing. And, you know, I think I was a little disappointed that we don't have a relationship with Hat Club. You know what I mean? You know, I know we do sneakers, but hats are a very big deal for us.
Yep.
And I know a lot of people and a lot of listeners and people, they ask, yo, where's that? Where'd you get that hat? Where's this hat? You know, oh my God, where you get? Yo, we got a hat club. We always, and you know, Panda, you know, shout out to Panda. You know, she's cool. You know, she's sent a few hats to us before a few times and stuff like that. But I really thought we would have a really bigger relationship with them, you know, and it never happened. So I appreciate you giving us this opportunity to do so. You know,
Oh,
a lot of people, huh?
Always.
Yeah, you
I've
know,
been wanting
a
to work
lot of
with you guys for a
people,
long time.
and this is no shade to him, and you know, it's no shade to him whatsoever, because I appreciate him coming on the show, but I honestly think J Tip's first show was ever ours. I'll be honest with you. J Tips, you know, has designed some clubs for Hat Club, and now he's doing some stuff for Saucony. And I think our podcast was the very first podcast J Tips has ever been on. And you know, I feel like we don't. I'm not looking for credit, but like we don't get the credit that we deserve in some aspects. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We talked to him about Air Force One that he had designed with Bespoke, and we had talked. You know, we sort of we introduced him to our audience. You know what I mean? And I'm not taking nothing away from his work or nothing like that, but like Then he went on to do things with Hat Club and other stuff. And I'm like, dang, like we got on hats every week. Hat Club is very big in Arizona. Like
Q. That's where their HQ is. Yeah.
it's where the headquarters is. We've been buying Hat Club hats since we were 16, since I was 16. Since I got that first Boston hat, I have never gone anywhere else besides Hat Club. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We used to be looking for pinwheels, used to be looking for all these hats. Like we used to be in such a hat competition out here with some of the cats on the streets where we hung out. It was who can get the rarest pinwheel hat at the time, you know? But like I said, man, I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to do this. So, you know, I wanted to do something with the palm tree, you know, I wanted to do something with the green down, you know. The palm tree, you know, it's one of those trees where it's like it shades itself sometimes. It has leaves under and leaves on top. So it's like the leaves on top shades the leaf below. So it was like a darker green to like a Kelly green. So I think I always wanted to do the crown and sort of that darker forest green a little bit.
Okay.
And that's like sort of
like the green eggs and ham watermelon.
Yeah.
Green,
yeah. So sort of that green to where it like represents that the underbelly of the palm tree of the palm leaves. It's like that shaded area, you know. It was like it was protected from the sun. And, you know, I always wanted to do a hat with the Dodgers, the D logo, right? Now, I always never bought one though. I don't own a single Dodgers hat. Now, the reason is because D has taken on a different connotation.
Yeah, you might get an A applause. Yep.
Yeah, so you know, I said, dang, I always want the D. And I said, you know what? Pause. I said, if I make a hat, I'm going to use the Dodger D. Okay. I'm going to do it. All right. And I always wanted it to be white. You know, I always think a white logo is just the cleanest contrast to the crown of a hat. You know, if I could get that Dodgers, that D right in the middle. You see, even saying it is crazy. It's so ridiculous. Right? It's so ridiculous the times that we're in right now. You can't even say D, you know.
But you're in a safe space here though, so don't worry.
I know. So, you know, I always wanted that white with that upper crown, sort of that dark forest green. And you know, the one thing that's very unique about the California palm trees are how high they were, you know, how high they are. Here in Arizona, we have a lot of palm trees as well. We have some that are high, some that are low, but like they're not like those palm trees. Our palm trees are like a little bit wider base. Sometimes they're a little bit more sturdy than those, even though the California ones, they stand their ground, you know. We used to stand by them. Like we would go to people's friends' houses that, you know, my mom's friends' houses. We would play outside and we would run around the palm trees, and you can look up at a palm tree and realize how small you were, you know, to them, and that brown, you know. So I wanted that visor like a light brown, sort of like a sand, not too dark, not too light, and that would represent the base of the palm tree, you know.
All right, so let me pull the browns for you, and then you can pick which one you want. So here are the browns, some of them.
So that one that's on, let me see the number. Yeah, that khaki one.
The khaki? Okay, perfect.
Yeah, I like that khaki for that because, you know, that base of the palm tree was never too dark. It was never too light. You know, it wasn't like, you know, I used to live in Oregon for a period of time. It wasn't, you know, like a Douglas fir. You know, it was like a little bit lighter. You know, some of them had a little bit of damage on it. You know, I used to love that. So I always said that visor would be that khaki, that upper would be that dark green for the leaves with the white D in the middle.
All right, so let's do that. So brown button, wheat button.
Yeah, I'd probably do the wheat buttons.
Yeah. Oops. But yeah, going back to your appreciation for me getting you in here, it's always been my plan to work with you guys. I've been begging you guys to make merch forever. It seems like.
know.
And I think
Uh,
I got George on Instagram one time because you're just like, you got to talk to George, like you got to
I-
convince George. And I'm like, all right. So I think the first interaction, speaking to him, he's like, listen, man, we don't want that cheap shit. Um, we've been through this before. Don't give me that like cheap embroidered hats. I'm like, we can make our own hats, man. He's like, really? I'm like, yeah, man. And at the time, we had just gotten, I think, our views from the Vault hats done and back from New Era. I'm like you guys don't have to like be goofy like us and put like your face and your bodies on a hat, but I can
you
make you guys
know,
hats. And then
see,
he just never got back to me.
people, hats would be the one thing that I would definitely want to make for the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
But I always felt like I didn't want anybody to wear anything that necessarily, so boldly represented the podcast.
Okay.
I never wanted anything to be like the Sneak This podcast, tune
Yeah.
in. I didn't want our faces. I didn't want anything because I would never wear that. I have a ton of podcasts that I listen to and shows that I appreciate, and I would never buy their merch. Never. I wouldn't. Now, if it was something that so I always thought, man, maybe I could do a shirt with just SD, Sneak This. Now I was like, I don't want it to look like San Diego. And if somebody says that means suck dick, I'll be angry. Like I'll literally punch something. So I was like, it just got into my head. And then I was like, man, maybe my own thing. I don't know. We've never made a t-shirt, never made a hoodie. We have 2 hats that we made, 2 snapbacks that we made for our show, sold them out super duper quick. And I can't. But then I feel like I would really love to do a fitted, you know what I mean? But it's just not the easiest thing to do to get in there to start making fitteds, you know what I mean? And like I said, you've always reached out and stuff, but it always stressed me out. I would get so stressed out at the thought of like designing something. I think that's partly why I quit architecture school.
Okay.
I couldn't handle it. It was
All
just
right.
like too much stress for me,
Well, we finally cornered you and we got you.
Right.
So I had to make this whole show so we could finally make a hat for you guys.
This entire concept is really dope, man. This is a really great idea.
Thank you. It was just always something that we do like all the time, like in
Right.
terms of mocking up. I think I'm like a really like let's just get it done person. So whenever I had to deal with the rep and wait for the rep to do this for me, I would just get frustrated. So I'm like, all right, well, you know what? Here you go. This is how I want it.
Right.
This is the mock-up. So eventually started teaching other people to do it. Justin, he's been on your show from Hat Club.
Yeah.
Kind of taught him how to do it. And it just kind of became like a popular thing. And then all of a sudden now, like, it seems like everyone in the mother is like a hat designer now. It never used to be a cool like job title.
Yeah, Justin was I think he was on our show too as well.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. Really
so
early on.
Shout out to him.
Yeah.
But there was like another picture that I sent you with like it was like me and my dad and my brother, and that was in front of oh man, I forgot whose house that was when I was younger, but it was one of those blocks that had a bunch of palm trees. And I just always remember me and my dad and my brother would always take a picture outside on the street. I don't know why. I have multiple pictures of us outside on the street like that, just me and my little brother. And it just makes me feel good. You know what I mean? It just makes me like, this is California to me,
This one?
Yeah, that one. So
That's
that
awesome.
picture right there is like a collage of pictures. And like that picture of right there is my dad. And then to the left is my little brother and then me. And then in the top right is my oldest son, my stepson, Oscar, and then my son, Cortez, and he's holding my daughter at the time. She was, maybe like a couple months old or whatever. So that's like me and my dad and my brother. And then like up there is like my kids. And then in the middle picture with the red little pajamas, that's me as a kid. And then down there at the bottom is me and my son, So it was sort of like that full circle of like, man, I was the kid with my dad and, whatnot. And, that's
awesome.
like one of the pictures that we took as a younger kid in California. It just always makes me think about that,
Yeah, you look a lot like your pops. I don't know if you got that.
Yeah, I get that a lot.
Yeah,
A lot of people that like when I first moved to Arizona, everybody in my family is from Arizona. except me and my brother. My brother was born in
Okay.
Long Beach, and I was born in Oxnard. So when we moved to Arizona, it was like finally we get to be with family finally. And then when I moved out here, my dad passed away like the second year, maybe
Damn.
the first year out here. So, but my dad went to high school out here, college out here. Everybody knows him. So then it was just running into everybody all the time, like, man, you look just like your dad. Man, I knew your dad. I went to school with your dad. Your dad taught me how to do this. Oh man, your dad was always a cool cat. You know what I mean? So I was like, all right, that I appreciate that. But funny story about the Dodgers, right? So my dad wasn't big, he wasn't a baseball fan, right? He appreciated the game, but he wasn't a fan. And my dad started out at Kmart's. Kmart's was a big deal.
Mhm.
Kmart's were like Targets now.
Yeah.
And he was at the bottom at Target. I mean, Kmart. He was at the bottom. And I didn't realize that as a kid how hard my dad was working. I just knew he wasn't home a lot, but he worked his way up. And I remember when they were giving him the first opportunity to have his own Kmart store, which is why we moved to Oregon. And I remember it was like his mentor, and I can't remember the guy's name. I want to say it was Ricketts, but I can't remember. And he was a huge Dodgers fan. And whatever he did for my dad, like my dad said, we're now Dodgers fans. And that was it. Because
Nice.
he did something for my dad that I guess was just my dad owed him. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? He was like, from this point on, we wear Dodger blue. We are Dodgers fans. Me and my dad went to Dodgers games after that. It was crazy. That was it. It had nothing to do with actual baseball. It was just
The loyalty.
somebody who was,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So that was our story. And I always thought that was dope. So, and my favorite patch has always been the 40th anniversary patch.
Mhm.
When I look at that one, it looks like Hollywood. It feels Hollywood. It feels luxurious. It feels California to me. You know what I mean? And in that 1958 to 98, that block of time is like me in the middle. I'm
Nice.
40 years old right now, and I feel like that 40 right there is just me right there. You know what I mean?
Perfect. How do you want to
So,
color the patch?
you know what? I wanted to leave it as is.
Perfect. That works for me.
Um, I think, I know, like, a lot of the patches and stuff like now, the colors, they try to like whatever, but I like that first iteration, that traditional view of it. It
I'm
to
fine
me,
with that.
it's always looked luxurious to me.
I'm fine with that. If you look at a lot of the hats that I design, it's the same thing. I very rarely touch the patch.
Yeah,
I keep it.
I've seen some bad patches,
Yeah. Well, yeah.
where they overwork them or stuff like
Mhm.
that, and sometimes it just doesn't work. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Either too much metallic or just not proper color theory. Like it gets washed out or
yeah, like
trying to limit the colors. That happens a lot.
yeah, like before, you know, I was heavy Dodgers, so I would try to buy as much Dodgers as I could, but like I just loved other team hats.
Hmm.
So before I could just say, man, forget this. I have a lot of connections with teams. I lived in a few places. So, I built a connection with the A's and the Giants and the Dodgers. I just built and the Diamondbacks now. I built this connection from where I lived. And I was trying to buy, like, all right, I really want an orange and black hat, but I'm gonna buy an orange and black Dodgers hat. It just never felt the same. It's like buying a navy blue Dodgers hat. It would
Yeah.
never feel like a Yankee hat. Never. Never. I don't care what anybody says. You can't replace a Dodger traditional. You can't replace a Yankee traditional. You can't replace a Boss. You just can't. These
Yeah.
hats, it's something about them. So I have bought this like orange and black 75th anniversary giant patch, Dodgers black and orange. And I'm thinking, cool, I'll wear this. So then I'm going to get a bunch of crap for wearing a San Francisco Giants hat. I wore that hat one time and I felt embarrassed. That that 75 patch, it had so much orange, and the white thread was like perforated or something. Yuck, yuck,
Yeah.
disgusting. I bought
It.
myself a Giants hat.
I've done that too. Like I've looked at it. By the time you get it, you're like, why did I even buy this?
Yeah,
But it happens to all of us.
it
In
does.
terms of Batterman, do you have a preference? Raised, flat?
Just raised white.
Okay. You want
Yeah.
to keep it just how it comes,
Uh,
or do you want to
Actually,
change
is
these?
it possible to get rid of the blue and the red?
Yeah, it's possible. What color do you want
Just
to make them?
No color. Is that possible?
You want to do like an all white Batterman?
No. Is it possible to have like the outline, the silhouette,
Mm-hmm.
no red in the back, like the green of the hat shows through it?
We'll just do a color thread match. So like it'll
Okay.
be
Well, then a color thread matching
yeah,
the green.
yeah. So it will look like it's see through, but
Okay.
there'll still be I guess embroidery thread there. Yeah, that's cool. I don't think I've ever made one like this.
So that's always been to me like, the LA is the LA logo.
Mm-hmm.
It was, I mean, obviously it's for the Dodgers, but then also at the same time, it was part of gang culture. You know what I mean? It was like you can identify, but the LA logo was always safe. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You could wear, well, depending on what neighborhood you walked in, but you could be traditionally safe in LA with just your regular Dodgers hat. You know what I mean? So, but that LA one, it stood out.
Yeah, this one's awesome.
And the white, I always hated doing the white,
Sweatband.
the sweatband, but I feel like the hats are better with the white one.
To me, they look cleaner, but they're less practical.
Yeah, here in Arizona, it's around 117. That sweatband is filthy. All right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I just recently started trying to clean my hats and the sweatbands and stuff. I always
Good
just take
luck.
a brush
Yeah.
and brush them, but you have to, you know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
it's at the point where it's like sometimes that sweatband is unsalvageable, you know what I mean? And the
Yeah.
smell, boy, if you leave a hat in the car in Arizona, the
If it's
whole
wool,
head.
it'll shrink. If it's wool, it'll shrink for sure.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Can hats get bigger?
Over time, most of the time they shrink, but you can do different things to stretch
Oh,
them.
okay. I felt like some of my hats lately, I've been putting them on like, man, did my head get smaller or what? But I've
Yeah.
always been a 7/3/8.
Yeah, it's rare. So like this, like a hat jack. So it's like for cowboy hats. So
Oh,
you
okay.
just press it on, and it's like a vice, and it slowly makes it bigger. So you crank it.
Oh,
It's
really?
not
That
great.
work?
Somewhat, and then it usually goes back. If you do it too much, your hat can split. The other way is you could just really force it, either with your
Right.
arms or put it on your knee or put it on your foot, stretch it out. But it's not
Yeah.
yeah. I've heard people cut their bands inside in certain spots to give them
I've
more.
done that before too.
Yeah,
I've done
yeah.
that.
But
So
that's too much work, man.
yeah, it really is.
But yeah, so you've decided on white. I'm cool either way. It just
I
depends
I,
on you.
I would like white in my
Okay.
hats.
All
I
right.
would.
Perfect. I think for me personally, I think white is cleaner, but black is more practical. So either way, I'm happy. I'm happy
I like the white.
to oblige whatever you prefer. So number one is done. All right. Now let me get rid of this, and then we'll start hat number 2.
Is that an Astros hat? Ew.
Yes. That's what I was working on earlier. They won a contest. We're doing it like a design contest right now. That's the one that got
Yeah,
through.
I've seen that. I used to be such a Craig Biggio and Jeff Bagwell fan, Killer Bees
Killer
when I was
Bees.
younger. I
Yeah.
used to love them.
Yeah.
And then, like as I got older, I don't know what. And actually, it was once the Astros beat the Dodgers. I was like, boy, I hate the Astros.
Mm-hmm.
There are 2 hats that you'll never ever see me with, and that's a Washington Nationals and a Houston Astros.
Really?
Both of them have fire hats too. And I sort of have a low-key relationship with the Nationals when I worked out in DC. They gave us a lot of free tickets. Now, this is when they sucked, all right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that stadium they
When
were
they
in,
first moved over.
oh my God. That stadium was insane. Their security was so lax. We used to bring entire bottles of alcohol in there. Like, we were out of control. We were in college, but like I was working in DC on Capitol Hill, trying to be a lobbyist, and the Washington Nationals were trying to get anybody to go to the games. They would give us boxes of tickets. We would be giving them out to friends. I was using national tickets and other things to get like entrance in the clubs. I was like, I got you. I got 10 tickets for you. And they would let us in the clubs. These would do some crazy stuff.
That was a rough time because they pretty much had to make the Montreal Expos so shit that no one wanted them so that they can move them without like
Yeah.
any backlash. So that was a rough time for baseball, man. Because if you really look back, they had some players, man.
Oh yes,
They had some
they had some
players.
great players.
Yeah, but
So,
all right. So are we gonna go Arizona or Oakland next?
so we're gonna go Oakland. All right.
Okay.
Now I sent you some Paris pictures. I would like to do a Paris hat last if that's possible.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
However you want. However you want.
So the next one is Oakland. Now I always tell people this. I was born in LA. I was built in Oakland. Not even Oakland, but it was like Antioch, but it was Oakland. We stayed in San Pablo, like the whole Bay Area, right? I also feel like the Bay Area like built me, and then Arizona is like my who I am now. You know what I mean? Um, but man, so I wanted to do something with the A's. You know, this is another baseball stadium that is embarrassingly bad, right? Um, I had been to like 3 Dodger games before with my dad before we had moved to Oregon. Oregon didn't have a baseball team. They had the Mariners who we would support in Seattle. Then the Blazers, we lived in Salem, but the Blazers played in Portland, which was like an hour and a half away from Salem. So it was like we really didn't have a lot of sports to go to. We would go to like Oregon, the Beavers sometimes, Oregon State. We'd go to the Ducks, back to Eugene, but that was far as well. So when we came to Oakland, man, we used to almost live in that stadium. We used to another place that would give away free tickets. Like it was like go to the grocery store, spend $100, get 8 tickets. You know, it was like my church. You know, they would just drop off tickets at the church, and we would go all the time. And the sun would be blazing on those like cement bleachers. It was brutal out there. But the A's players used to just be so nice and talk to us and like really, I mean, I'm gonna tell you something. Out of all sports, baseball players are just the best personality wise. I don't know why. They've just always, anytime I've ever had interaction with a major league baseball player, it's just been nothing but just good stuff. Like I just genuinely felt like they really wanted to talk to us, you know? And I always was like, so I'm gonna tell this story real quick on why I want to make this hat, right? So it's kind of it was a crazy story. So in Oakland, we stayed in San Pablo. My dad had got another store. It was a Kmart store that was in Richmond, and we stayed in San Pablo. San Pablo's like it's all pretty much Oakland. It's like LA, or it's like Inglewood, but it's LA. You know. So um, man, I had this friend, right? And I use the word friend loosely. Okay, like he was one of those cats where it was like you thought you were best friends, but then like just for whatever reason, like he'd want to fight you or you're now enemies for the week. And you're like, what the heck is this problem this week? But then he'll like come knock on your door, like, yo, you want to go hang out? And you're like, bro, you just, anyways, he was that guy. So I remember that, like, you know, his mom and dad had this, like, it was this mom and dad were divorced. They had this crazy relationship, right? It didn't matter who was at the house. They were wild arguments, right? So I remember his mom had moved to Oakland and his dad lived in Antioch. And at this time, we were living in Antioch. Antioch's about 50 minutes from Oakland, something like that. So I remember I was like, yo, let me go stay the night at his house. The mom was like, are you okay? That's fine. You better make sure that was the rule. You just stay at their house. You know the rules. You check in, whatever. So I went to his house, had my sleeping bag, had my stuff ready to stay the night. And his mom had drove to the house. It was at his dad's house. Mom came up wilding, right? I'm talking in the middle of the street on some like super hood wilding stuff like, this is my weekend. He's supposed to be at my house. And I remember standing there with my sleeping bag, like, you know, what we doing? So I don't even know what happened with his dad, but somehow he got the mom to leave, right? Now my friend felt really bad, you know what I mean? And I always kind of thought this was why he kind of the way he was. You know, he just had a lot going on in his life, you know, stuff that I couldn't relate to. So he was like, all right, well, look, let's get on he said like, oh no, he told me he said his mom was gonna be, I forgot what it was, but we ended up on this BART. So I sent you the picture. It was a BART transit. That was the sort of transit, and you could get on in like Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's like another city in California that's like bad, like stupid bad. Like when I can tell you some of the things that I almost got into in Pittsburgh. Oh my God, right? So we got on the BART, Now, I knew I wasn't supposed to do this, right? But we went all the way to Oakland on the BART. You know, my mom thinks I'm down the street at his house, but we all the way in Oakland, right? So I'm like, all right, man, I'll go with you. I know I shouldn't have, right? And it's getting late, right? And the BART is nowhere to play around. Like, it ain't one of them, like, get on the thing. And we were 8th grade at the time. We were young. But this is when kids knew how to survive, you know.
Mhm.
My son now, he can't find his way home from school, you know. Kids are different. So we got on the BART, right? Now, I knew what he used to do. He used to steal from people on the BART all the time. I had never been with him when he does this. So I'm thinking, well, he ain't gonna do this while I'm here, right? So what he would do is this is back with CD players. You have your CD player, people would have their CD players on the bar listening to their music. And what he would do is, as soon as the doors open, as soon as they're getting ready to close, he would rip their CD player out their hands and dip, right? I didn't think, I was like, nah, he ain't gonna do, not with me here. He's not gonna do this. Not, no. So it's about, dang, man, it may be about 8:30 at night, maybe. It was dark outside, right? Platform, BART station, police officers, you could never find them. Never. But boy, this day, we get to this station, right? We like went right past the Oracle where the Warriors play. I can't even remember where we were. He jumped up, ripped this guy's CD player out of his hand, right? Now, he thought the guy was by himself. We didn't even see the other dudes that was with him. I don't even know how we didn't even notice him. Soon as he ripped it out of his hand, he jumped off the BART. I'm like, oh, crap. So I got to jump off the BART. Man, this cat jumped off the BART with us and started beating the brakes off of him, right? Like off my friend, right? And then the other dudes came and started beating the brakes off too. I'm like, oh my God. So I'm like, well, I have to fight with him because that's my dog.
Yeah.
So we just fighting. Like, it's not even like a fight. It's just this crazy tussle, right? We just scuffling. Like, it's like we're just grabbing everything, right? It's stupid, right? Man, the police came out of nowhere, right? I'm talking, you could never find one. But today, they were there, right? So the police came up. I mean, they just jumped on all of us, right? Just tackled us all, put us all in cuffs, right? So nobody was saying nothing, right? Now, I'm shook, right? This is my very first time in cuffs, right? I'm in 8th grade, right? We're all minors, right? Now, the other kids may have been like, they had to be high school, like sophomores or juniors. Them cats were big. And my friend was pretty big too. I'm a small dude. I'm super short, but like, you know, I got it. I had to get it in. We had to get the dusty. So we're in cuffs and they come to us and they're like, hey, do you want to call your parents? They were going to let us all call our parents, right? And I'm like, oh my God, I'm in Oakland. I'm supposed to be down the street. I can't call my parents, right? And he wasn't going to call his mom because he wasn't supposed to be there. So I'm like, oh my God. So I had just, you know what? I'm going to call the house. I have to, right? Man, I call my house, right? My dad answered, right? I'm like, now you would think that would be trouble, but no, it was my mom I was more worried about, right?
Okay.
I thought to myself, if anybody's going to have understand this, it's going to be my dad, right? I called my dad. I said, look, Dad, do not tell mama, all right? I was like, you got to come get me. I'm at the BART station in Oakland. It was like between the Oracle and maybe the airport. I don't even remember. You got to come get me and my friend, right? And he was like, Oakland? I mean, you could hear it in his voice. I'm like, dude, can you just please come get us? The police are here. And he was like, the police? Like,
Oh, no.
I'm like, just please. So I gave the phone. It was and this is like, we're at like this station, like the BART station police thing, you know?
Yeah.
I give the phone to the officer. The officer explained to my dad what stop, how to get there, whatnot, right? Now, it's about 9:30. It's late, right? Now, and I didn't know how my dad was going to leave the house without my mom knowing what he's going to do. My dad came and got us. It's about an hour later. Oakland's about 57 minutes to an hour away, right? So my dad had to drive. He's heated, right? He comes to the station, picks us up. He already don't like my friend. So whatever.
Yeah.
We get in this truck. And my dad had one of those Toyota trucks where it was just one row. So we're all just scrunched on one row. It was no cab, was no back seat. It was one row. So we're all next to each other like this. I'm talking silence. So I sent you that interstate picture of the 4 and that Hercules highway sign, right? And I'm just sitting here like, well, I'm assuming it's silent because he doesn't want to embarrass me and rip into me in front of my friend. And he's not going to rip into my friend. You know, that's not his kid. You know what I mean? So we're driving on the 4, and I'll never forget this, right? And this is why I wanted to use the elephant logo for the A's, because we're right by the A's arena. And it was something that my dad always talked about. Like, he always said this to me. He was like, I know you won't forget. Because I was that kid. Like, I was never bad, but boy, I was always there. I was always, oh, I was there. Like, oh, we're gonna go do this. Well, I'm gonna go too. Like, I was there. Like, I had to be included, but I wasn't gonna do anything, right? He pulled over on the freeway. We got off on that Hercules exit, and we're in this small city, right? It's right outside of Oakley called Hercules, right? And he pulled over to this, like, I don't know, AM, PM. I don't know what it was, but it was dark, right? And he just sat there. And my friend, everybody respected my dad, right? We're just sitting there in this little tiny Toyota navy blue pickup, all on the same row. And he said, I'm going to tell you something, and I know you're going to remember this. That's all he said it to me. He knew I would remember this. That's how I raised my kids, and that's how I learned and got to where I am, by those lessons and those resumes of other people. I believe other people. I've never done a single drug in my life. I've never tried weed. I've never done anything. You know why? Because when Dare came to school and Dare said, you can ruin your life, I said, I believe you. So I never did it. My dad pulled over, and this is the shifters up here on the shifted it up, turned the truck off. I'm like, oh my God, he's about to beat us up. He says, Greg, I know you're going to remember this. Life is black and white. That's why I wanted to do the crown off white, right? And I wanted to do the visor black. He said it's black and white. He said it's so easy to be bad. And he was giving me like a lesson, not yelling, a lesson. He said it's easy to be bad. He said, do you know how many times a day I'm at work and I want to punch somebody in the face? I want to slap somebody. I want to grab somebody by the shirt. You know how many customers we deal with? You know how many bad employees I have? And I want to do the easiest thing. The easiest thing is to just reach over and punch them in the nose. He said it's harder to be good. It's harder to go, I don't need to be here in this situation. It's that black and white. He said, every once in a while, you're going to find yourself in a gray. He said, I know when you were on that BART, you were in the gray. You knew you were wrong, but you didn't know how to get back to the white. You didn't know how to get back to the black. You were stuck in the middle. And I just sat there. My eyes are just welling up, but I'm trying not to cry in front of my friend, right? I look over my friend. He's crying, right? So I'm like, oh, shoot, like he's listening. And he starts talking about his brother, my uncle.
Okay.
My dad and his brother, night and day. My uncle had went to Vietnam, right? He was in Vietnam and like just never the same. Drugs, women, alcohol. It was bad, right? And he says, I know you know the difference between me and your Uncle Robert. That's night and day. He couldn't figure out how to get out the gray when he got back. My uncle was falsely accused of rape, like went to prison for like years. And then the person was like, oh, yeah, I made it up. I was lying. He was a black guy, right? And it messed him up even further. And my dad said, there's a difference. He said, I want you to take this lesson and learn. He said, first of all, you're going to owe me. He said, you're going to owe me because I had to lie to your mom. So he never lied to my mom. He was like, this is the first time being married I've lied to your mom. Since he was in charge of a Kmart store, it happened all the time. Somebody would break in and the alarm would go off. He told my mom that the store alarm was going off. He has to go to the store. That's how he had to come and get me, right? And he said, you owe me. He said, I don't know how you're going to owe me. I don't know when you're going to owe me, but you're going to pay me back, right? I had to lie to your mom to come get you out of a situation that you shouldn't have been in, and you knew it. He said it's black and white, and I know you won't forget this. When you become an adult, you have to make those hard decisions. When you're stuck in that gray and you can't figure out if you're going to go to the white, if you're going to go to the black, you got to fight it. But you got to fight not even getting into the gray. When you got on that BART, you entered the gray and you couldn't figure out how to get out, and it just went to black. He said you could have easily went the other way. You guys could have died. He was like, you guys could have got killed by those kids or those other guys, and we wouldn't have even known it. And I just remember driving by, it was the Raiders and the A's shared that stadium, and driving by Oracle. And I just remember sitting there in Hercules, like, oh my gosh, like understanding like what could have happened. Now, that wasn't the last time in my life things happened, but that was one that I would never forget. So that elephant, the elephant is always known for having a great memory. I think they say that elephants never forget a face. And he always used to say that to me, you will remember this. So I always wanted to use I know we talked, yeah. So the elephant for the A's logo, it's like their classic logo. It's one of the original logo before they had like, or it's like an alternate logo, right?
Spring training, yeah. So they just wear it.
Yeah, like the spring training alternate logo. You know, it was something that you didn't see a lot on a lot of hats that people bought. Typically, everybody bought the A with the apostrophe S, but I remember I was like, okay, I would love to use that. Yeah, that walking elephant one, you know, it's kind of a weird logo, you know what I mean? But now looking at both of these, I think I'd rather have the one with the bats.
Okay. With the sunglasses or without?
Without.
Okay.
Cool. So, but like I said, he talked about that black and white and that gray. So I always wanted to do the crown of a hat, that off-white, sort of that, you know, where it's like you can tell it's not white, but it's not. I don't know. Is it taupe? Maybe not taupe.
They call it chrome. It used to be called college white, but yeah, it's chrome, off white.
So like that I always wanted to do that, and I always wanted to do the elephant in black, but I wanted to leave the baseball bats their color. Now the hard thing with the elephant, see, the elephant that I had sent you was a one solid color. This other elephant, if you make it black, could you see the details though? You could?
Yeah, because so like this, so like this part is a little bit textured, and then like you'll see it when in the hat. When we mock it up here, it might look like a big blob of shit, but but you'll see the texture. I mean, the other way too is we could make one of them like a metallic black, and then the other one just a flat black. But
whatever you think will look better or good. But I did want that elephant to be black.
Yeah. Well, do you want to leave the tusks white or want to make those black?
Ooh, is that an option?
Yeah, we can leave it.
Oh yeah, let's leave those white. I think that's kind of cool.
Yeah. So it'll be you'll see it up close. You'll see the textures and kind of where they are. But yeah, it'll be mostly black.
Okay. And you know, it was crazy because like I thought he was gonna take him to his dad's house and bring me home, but he didn't. He took me back to finish because he was like, you can't come home because I'm not gonna explain that. I don't think my mom ever found out. It's never been discussed again, right?
Oh, wow.
You know, she's never talked about it. He never talked about it. So I just always figured he never told her about it, what happened. I went back over there, finished the sleepover for that weekend, came back home. And you know, when you're that young, it's awkward in the house, boy. Like, I'm just trying to avoid my dad as much as I possibly can.
How fast did he come back for the retribution?
I never did. Yeah, you know what's funny is, and like this could be like overly symbolically or overly thinking it, but like I honestly think that like it was sort of like I better make something of myself. Like that's my payback. You better make something of yourself. You know, you're gonna owe me for this. You know, because he could have been like, no thanks, take him to juvie. He could have easily done that. You know, but I always said to myself, maybe that's what he meant. He wanted to, you know what, you're gonna owe me one day. You know, and you know, like I said, he passed away when we first moved to Arizona when I was 16. 17. So it's like, a lot of things that I've accomplished in my life, which I'll talk about with the Diamondbacks hat, he didn't get to see. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so like that's sort of like my thing, that black and white moment, and being on that bar and being in front of the Oakland Arena stadium, and being there with my friend. Now, my friend, I couldn't tell you where he's at. Like he couldn't stop being bad. Okay, that's just the best way I can put it.
Yeah.
Now that World Series, that 1974, that's just more basically because I just like it.
Okay.
I'm
I'm
not gonna
fine with
lie
that.
to you. It's always probably, out of all the A's side patches that are used, that's just always been the one I sort of like. I liked.
They have historically bad side patches.
Yeah,
I would say they have probably the worst offering of
yeah,
patch.
and I liked the size of it. I like how
Mhm.
big it is on the side of the hat. It's very basic. It's just straightforward. But I think I would like this one if possible, black. Or would it look better if it was white outlined in black? This one's a really hard one because I was like, maybe it should just be straight black.
So you could do it black letters, white outline, or even silver if you wanted silver outline.
Which one do you think would look better?
I think silver will make it pop better.
Okay, let's do
And
silver.
then,
I'm fine
yeah.
with that. I don't have any like real affinity with the side patch. It's just that's always been like sort of the one. I have a few Oakland A's hats, and I think most of them have like a series. I can't remember which one it is. Not Subway
It's
series.
probably Battle of the Bay.
Battle of the Bay. That's the one that is. All my Oakland A hats have those on it. So I don't have any with the World Series 1974. So just like the LA one, I don't have any with the Dodgers D, and I don't have any with the World Series 74.
Yeah. They played in this World Series?
The A's?
Yeah.
Yeah, wasn't that 74?
As long as they did, then it will get approved.
Let me see.
If they didn't, we might have an issue.
Let me double check. Like, I don't want to use one that's not. Yeah, the A's won that one. Yeah.
Okay, good.
It was against the Dodgers. That's right.
Perfect.
I made me question. I was like, wait a minute. Yeah, that was the one they beat the Dodgers. Yeah.
Yeah, because I see the 75th used a lot, and that's like usually Yankees and I think Pirates.
Yeah.
But it looks very similar to this one. Yeah. So like the silver, you got a little bit of like a Raiders feel too, tiny bit.
Oh, that's a good point. I like that since they shared that stadium. That's a good. I like that.
Mhm.
And then the batter man in the back, right? Just the black maybe.
Okay. You want to do the same thing? Black, like outline, white fill?
Yeah.
All right, cool. That's a cool like way to do it. I've never even thought to do it like that. And there you have it. First half of the interview with Greg from the Sneak This. It was a wonderful episode. I hope you guys enjoyed watching it. There is going to be one small change to one of the hats. The 75th World Series patch did not get approved with that stomper. So we ended up having to do a quick audible with the 40th anniversary patch. So the patch that we did mock up in the video did not get approved. So we had to make a small change for that. But other than that, these hats are now available to pre-order at Pro Image Sports Colorado. I'll put a link in the description of the video. And yeah, they're having a ETA for about 3 months until you get them. But hopefully you guys do pick them up. I think they're both beautiful hats. They tell an amazing story. Greg was an awesome guest to have on and kind of chop it up and feature on this channel. So hope you guys enjoyed the episode. Make sure you guys follow Greg and George at the Sneak This podcast. It's one of my favorite podcasts when it relates to sneaker content. So until next week, I'm signing out, guys. Stay fitted. Peace.